Welcome, everybody, to a Delco Nerd Network Hot Take. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen a hot take before, well, it's where a few friends get in the basement, we give our thoughts, we give our opinions on a TV show, a movie, or a game. Today, it's going to be a show. Definitely a show. Going to be a show, and that show is Star Wars: The Acolyte. Here to discuss, as always, his M count is through the roof. Chris Trio.
Gooch, it's funny you say that because I showed up here with my bleeding crystal, and I'm ready to talk.
You bled
I
it
outside.
outside. You bled it before you came in.
I got very annoyed, and I got it to bleed, and then I came in, and I'm ready to talk about The Acolyte. How you doing today, my friend? How's it going?
I'm doing well. Maybe I'd be doing better if I had a lot of positive things to say, but let me just jump right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Not good. I wouldn't recommend anyone watch this. Star Wars fan, not a Star Wars fan. I don't think this is a good offering. And I'll be really blunt about it. This is not a good offering from Star Wars or Disney. It's a very skippable show. I found myself not enjoying any characters up until the last 2 episodes. I found some characters interesting, but I didn't actually enjoy any of them until their arcs came to an end at the end of the season.
Right.
Or I'll say the end of the show, because we don't really know if we're getting a season 2, and I hope we don't. I don't think we will.
You really did not seem this negative at all in the Discord. I'm actually kind of surprised right now.
But I can talk positively on the last 2 episodes, but the show as a whole is not good.
Sure.
And that's what we're talking about. Maybe if we were doing episode by episode, I'd be more positive about it. And I will be more positive once we talk about the end of the show.
Right.
But yeah, I think that as 8 episodes of a show, this is not good.
Sure. I'll disagree. I think it's fine. I don't think it's like nearly as bad as you're saying right now. I think the talk around this show has been some of the most exhausting and frankly ridiculous things I've seen in like the Star Wars community probably since The Last Jedi. Like how this is talked about, how it's like ruined Star Wars and like how they just can't do anything right, and it's been the worst. There's so many inconsistencies.
Ki-Adi-Mundi.
There's so many.
Ki-Adi-Mundi
Is
trio.
that supposed to even be Ki-Adi-Mundi?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I thought something on other, like I thought there was a big thing afterwards that was like, no, that's not in the. Either way,
no, that was Plo Koon. There's a guy who looks like
he's an
Plo
alien
Koon.
that looks like Plo Koon. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I did see that person,
but that is Ki-Adi-Mundi,
right?
And he's credited. It's Ki-Adi-Mundi
again. I mean, wow. I cannot believe they would change his birth year and do something like that to the Star Wars community. Huge. Truly,
just in defense of that specifically, don't you think it's a bit odd that they would decide to fuck all that shit up and be like, let's include
but what is it fucking
Ki-Adi-Mundi? Because I think it's, well, the fact that he has a line in, I think it's Attack of the Clones, where it's like, we haven't seen a Sith in thousands of years. It's like, well, you were actually like around when.
But they don't mention that it was a Sith. They're talking about that it's like it's a Force user. They don't, again, I get what you mean. I can see how that messes it up. But dude, the amount of inconsistencies and fuck ups in Star Wars that are much larger than that people just will let go is, I think, my point more than anything. And I don't even need to get caught up on that because genuinely, I don't give an absolute flying fuck when Ki-Adi-Mundi, everyone's favorite Jedi, was born. By the way, fun fact, I might have mentioned this on the last episode, but he is the only Jedi.
I think you mentioned it to me. I don't know
if I mentioned this on that episode. He is the only Jedi that is allowed to have sex. And do you know why, Gooch? It's because he is the last. Yeah, he is the last male, or he's a part of a species that is on the way out, and they need to make as many kids as they can. So like he has to get down and dirty. So good for him. But then there's other stuff that people start calling out, like there's fire in space. That never happened. Like I was watching Jeremy John's reviews of these, and I'm usually like copacetic with him, but the way he was like losing it on this stuff, I do think is like pretty funny to me. I don't know. Like, do I think there's nothing redeemable about this show? No. Do I think some of the characters are clunkily written and some of the story choices are odd? Yes, but do I think it's like this affront to Star Wars that I've been hearing?
Yeah, I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go.
Roll my eyes again and again.
I wouldn't go that far, and I don't think I came off that way, and I don't think.
No, I'm not saying. I'm talking to the. I didn't mean to imply that. If I did.
No, you didn't. You didn't. But I think there's a large conversation about, woke Star Wars,
Sure.
just to put it plainly. And it's like, we have two black main characters with a lot of minority side characters, like no white guys. So of course
that's not true.
There's
I mean, I guess no white guy made, but like again, that stuff.
There are.
Sorry, I apologize.
This isn't my opinion.
Yeah,
I'm just saying what the conversation.
I gotcha.
Is. Yeah, like. So that's just giving people a reason to pick up the tiki torch, if you know what I'm saying. It's just kind of like,
I guess
they're like opening, just this circumstance, regardless of if it's a pandering decision or it was a legitimate casting decision.
Sure.
Hard to tell with Disney, honestly. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they aren't pandering, but yeah, it's just giving them like the ammo.
To be honest, though, I think they just gave it to a director that very much thinks this way. Like, I don't think of thinking like of Disney. Like, sure, they want to make as much money as they can. They don't want. I don't think they want things to be this controversial. I think maybe they do in a little bit because then it draws people to them, and bad news is always, or bad press is always good press, whatever the saying is. But even like some of the things that people were reacting to about like what the creator was saying was just like,
some of the interviews were a bit odd. Like, it kind of sucks that like the dude who played that one Jedi with like the dreads, the black guy, he messed up and said like Anakin blew up the Death Star, and it's like, dude.
But like, do you need the actors in Star Wars to know Star Wars? You just need them to act well.
No, but I think at this point it's probably appreciated that you as an actor in Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or Cyberpunk maybe understand the source material to the point where it's assisting your performance.
Sure. I think there's a difference between understanding the source material and being a fan, because the guy who wrote fucking Andor talks shit about Star Wars all the time. I can't remember his name. Like, that is the most un-Star Wars show you can make while still setting it in the Star Wars universe. And that felt like something they gave to a creator and made what they want to make. Whether or not you agree or disagree with, I think Leslie Headland, whatever her name is, I think she was given the reins, and Disney actually let...
The writer?
Yeah, and the director.
Wasn't the director like some one named, like...
No, it's like... there was... I'm sorry, the showrunner, not the director. Leslie Headland or something like that. But like... To just call, I'm sorry if you haven't watched it though. Red Letter Media's review on The Acolyte, it's really more about the conversation around it. It's very good. I would highly recommend it. But there was one interview where like, the regular culture warriors are up in arms talking about it. It's like her and some other girl in an interview, and they're like joking around, like clearly joking, making jokes. And the guy goes like, well, C-3PO and R2-D2 are gay, right? And they're like, oh yeah, everyone knows that. That's the joke. And that has been a joke in Star Wars since back when like Family Guy made their Star Wars episodes. There's a joke about that in the thing. They're like, oh, the gay droids. And like the regular kind of cultural people were picking it up like, this is what they're showing to our children. It's like, are you guys insane? I don't know. This whole kind of argument around like the wokeness of it and all that really does blow my mind, because like if that in and of itself, if you see like a cast of those diverse characters in and of itself, then that signals to you that something's wrong, I don't give a flying fuck about who the main characters are. I care about what the story is, and I think the story was clunkily and not well made, clunkily put together and not well made in this respect. I think that's where I really get more bent out of shape about.
Once I got to the end of season, I kind of realized this was a second crack at Rey and Kylo.
Definitely, to a degree. I would agree.
It's the same storyline, and I assume there's going to be a lot of folks watching who maybe
definitely
didn't watch
a lot of Ahsoka in it too.
So let me explain. Two girls who are twins live on this planet with a all-female witch coven.
They're Night Sisters.
Jedis come in. They kind of want to take the twins away from this witch coven because they think it's dangerous for them, and essentially... one wants to go, the other doesn't. Shit goes down, the village ends up burning, and then these two sisters are kind of ripped apart from each other and are sort of like, one is good, one is bad, and then sort of the what was seeming to be happening in The Last Jedi, there was a switch beginning, or it start like in the middle of the show, like you're kind of seeing like a switch, like May, who you thought was bad, is becoming good, and Osha, who you thought was good, is becoming bad. And that does actually happen, which was pretty interesting to see. This, this switch of characters, and they also look exactly the same. The adult versions of them are played by the same actors.
Right,
the kids definitely aren't.
Yeah.
But interesting to see an actor play off of themselves. I didn't think that any of the acting or the performances were necessarily bad.
I loved Saul. I thoroughly enjoyed Saul's
He was played
performance.
by the guy
from Squid Game. I forget his name off the top of my head.
Yeah,
he learned English for the show. He didn't speak English before he read the, and I think he sounds, for just learning a language within the year and being able to emote and everything, he sounds great. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed him in that role.
His character is really interesting. I was talking yesterday to somebody, and we were talking about the show, and I feel like anything that is made about the Jedi, I feel like just further enforces why the Jedi sucks. And Soul's arc, essentially, is like why the Jedi suck in a way. Like, it's kind of like the Jedi try to deny that humans have emotions, and you see it in Anakin, you see it in Obi-Wan, you see it in, I was about to say Keanu, you see it in Qui-Gon Jinn. All these Jedi are supposed to like essentially like not be human beings and not have any sort of emotions, but they all do, and that essentially being human is essentially a corruption to the Jedi. So the Jedi don't work. And I think Soul kind of like depicts why. He feels for these kids who are like, what are they doing in this witch coven? And
by the way, it does look very scary in there.
And the show kind of paints that like what's her name? Ben, the Green Jedi lady.
Oh, I can't remember her name.
Books. Yeah, look her name up. She's kind of like in the end, she's like, Soul thought what he was doing was right, and he definitely thinks like that. Spoilers up until the end when he dies. But like, I'm like, there's some gray here, and I like the show kind of was like, like I'm probably taking these kids out of their environment, and like
if you really
and like really, what was her name?
I apologize, I got lost. The Green Jet,
taking those kids out of their
Master Venestra.
Yeah, like taking those kids out of their environment and indoctrinating them into the Jedi Order, probably like not the greatest approach there.
This show,
whether they want to go or not.
No, absolutely. And by the way, they both talk about it, I think, very well. It's like she's like, well, she wants to make the choice to go, and they're like, well, she's a child. And then the same thing on the other side of the Jedi. It's like, well, if she wants to go, she can go. It's like you're asking a child if they want to make a life-altering decision. This show very much, in my opinion, draws from the prequels and the idea of the Jedi being this just bureaucracy of idiots who don't know what they're doing. That think they can
they
control
explore
the
that
Force.
Right at the end when David Harewood coming in playing this governor character who, like, just like in the prequels, were debating whether the Jedi are like overstepping.
That's
and, like,
where I do feel
involved.
like a lot of the writing gets a little on the nose. I think you could write that whole scene a bit better.
Right, it was on
it
the
was
nose.
A little on the nose,
like,
and that was definitely, I think, one of the worst parts writing for me. But do I think that, like, as a Star Wars fan, you shouldn't watch this? I guess it depends on what kind of Star Wars fan you are. I enjoyed it for watching it all the way through from the beginning. I do think watching it week by week, I would have been like, where is this going? What's the idea here? I thought it was interesting how they kind of got rid of the OSHA. I guess I thought the mystery was going to be about who is killing these people to a degree, which it is with OSHA, but then they kind of switch it around immediately.
I did kind of not. Well, I was going to say something.
What, like spoilery?
No. Anyway, I didn't really like how our Sith character.
He felt a little like nameless. Yeah, it should have been Plagueis. Like that just should have been him. Like in my opinion,
or someone like really directly connected to him, which, I forget even the character's name. Was he even connected to him? But they kind of did this like trick where it's like, oh, like this guy who's serving him is telling you a lot about him, but oh no, it's just him. And I was just like,
to me, it does. I don't know if he is aware of Plagueis at this point. I think, that's what I like. And
yeah, we do get Plagueis.
We see him in this, which did feel like felt like a post note to me,
like a fan service moment. I mean, so is Yoda. It's like, what the fuck?
Well, Yoda
I didn't need that.
Sure, and I think Plagueis would have made sense in that spot where Yoda, he should have been the stinger, and Yoda, I think, because Yoda would be alive during this time. I think it makes sense to see him at some point. But I agree with you. It feels like a tug it. It's a member berries.
Remember?
For sure.
Remember Yoda? Remember Green Guy? Remember Baby Yoda? Remember Trio?
But
you remember?
I do remember. I remember very well. But I don't know. I think there is an interesting idea to the show, and I think the plot line of these two twins going on this separate journey that ends up putting them on opposite paths, and you even see these kind of moments of telling that. Obviously, Osha then puts on the white outfit. May has on the black, and there are some really fun moments in that of like, I don't know, seeing a lightsaber bleed was cool. But
for sure,
I do think that you needed to execute this story in a more cohesive way. That's my major issue.
Like I was really like, it's funny. I remember when we were doing our gut check podcast and we were talking about the Acolyte. The way the Acolyte was pitched seems so much different what it turned out to be. I think it should have been farther back in the past. The fact that it's so close to the prequels, it's like, well, you can do Yoda, you can do Plagueis.
Right.
Instead, like,
which is kind of what I thought. I thought they were just going to do Plagueis with this when it was first announced. But I'm sorry, continue.
No, I think if they put it further in the past, they could have like really been wholly original and done something all on their own. And I mean, we've seen that work out with like the Old Republic and stuff. Like,
sure,
there have been Star Wars ventures that have nothing to do with the Skywalker shit or anything close to it and work out pretty well. But I think, you know, again, like, don't love like the Jedi are weird. I like the Clone Wars. I think like that time in the Jedi is interesting, but like, now that I've seen this, like, oh, it's cool to see some Jedi in like different garb and using like different types of lightsabers.
The lightsabers seem thicker, like thicker, and especially
they seem more like form factored.
Some of them, but like I don't know what they did. Just I felt like some of them were noticeably like girthier.
Yeah, like I like how the Acolyte has the Cal Kestis thing with the smaller one. And detaches it.
The
really
modular
cool.
lightsaber.
Yeah, and like Venestra has the whip, which I was like, she whips out literally twice, and I was like, fine, cool. The fights were pretty good. I thought the fight in episode
the fights were awesome.
7 between our Sith guy and Soul is really good. Like I really enjoyed that. And then
Chimere.
Yeah.
Chimere, yeah.
Yeah, so the last two episodes really brought it together and sort of redeemed it from being like an ultimate failure for me. I found Soul again really compelling, like what not as a character, but what he was doing was interesting and like how he was justifying himself, and he did to the end. And then again, Osha and May's sort of morality swap. Chimere was uninteresting, but like I
just don't know much. Like you find out by the end that he was
there to service those two characters, not really actually be like any sort of like Sith character.
The only thing it gives you at the end is that he was Venestra's apprentice.
Right.
So that's I guess
and I really couldn't buy, like we were talking about, like, oh, he's a Sith. Well, like, yeah, but like I'm like, I don't know.
Sure.
We've never seen a Sith this young, and it just seems like he's like trying to be a Sith. Like, but like, and he's a Sith in name, sort of like Boba Fett, where Boba Fett is a Mandalorian in name, but he's not really a Mandalorian.
Well, and he's talking about looking for like, she's like, what are you after? He's like 2 or something. He talks about the rule of 2.
Yeah, it seems like he read it in a book, and he's like, oh, this seems cool. I'm gonna do this.
Well, and that's
I'm
like,
a Sith now.
And that's why to me, I don't know like necessarily what Plagueis's end game would be in that, in the way of, that's why that feels like a studio note of like, we need to put Plagueis in here somewhere. I don't know what his exact goal is, because we know his whole thing is he's looking for immortality. That's like because of what we know in Revenge of the Sith and the books, which aren't really canon anymore.
And a big thing that goes into the immortality thing is the fact that they're, you know, the Jedi are originally on Braddock to search for this emergence. It was essentially like, it's a strong, concentrated like ley line of Force, and the Force created Osha and May. They're the same person, but like,
well, they use the Force. The Night Sisters use that like Force energy to create them, right? I thought was the idea,
right? But yeah, they're like like one of them is a clone of the other. They're not two different people. They are the same person,
right?
And they back that up with like the M count, which again, just say midichlorians.
But that's what they say in the other ones. It's
yeah, I
always
know, but like
M count doesn't really even matter.
I feel like they're just
either.
trying to not use that word because they know Star Wars fans didn't like the midichlorian thing.
Right,
anyway.
but that was like a Lucas thing before. They would always say M count, even in like the Clone Wars and stuff. They'd be saying M count, you know. Because what, midichlorian
They don't say I just watched the Clone Wars. I don't have to say M count in that.
I mean, I've definitely watched something. I don't know. I've definitely
it's in the Mandalorian. They say M count.
I don't know. I like that better than midichlorian count. Midichlorians shouldn't even exist. That's like midichlorians are like the ultimate example of George Lucas going from like a very spiritual guy to a very scientific guy in the span of the first three to the middle three.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought that was interesting, and like, you know, I think like that Jedi team is pretty cool, and to like watch them sort of have their downfall. Episode 7, when we seeing the like, I hated actually that flashback scene with Ocean May because I found it kind of boring. But seeing it, because I guess I didn't at that time, and I really still don't care about Ocean May's characters. I care about like what they're doing and what they're going through, but not them as people. But Episode 7, seeing it through the perspective of Saw and his team, I like that more, and I found it more compelling because I think I care more about the Jedi, just because of being like into Star Wars. Like, even though I don't really like the Jedi.
I mean, the Jedi are we gonna act like that wasn't? They're not the coolest part of Star Wars for the most part,
right? Exactly, exactly.
And like that's where you do get into the Star Wars porn of it all. Like there is just heavy lightsaber and force use in this, and all that's great.
Souls.
Yeah, I do think all the fighting and stuff is great, but I will say I did love seeing them just being like surveyors. I thought that was an interesting idea, seeing that like that's a different part of the Jedi.
I like the fist fights that happen too. I mean, there's a lot between Carrie-Anne Moss's character, which somebody was asking me, like, oh, did you like her in it? I'm like, honestly, she's not in it enough to be like, I really liked her in it. She's in it very sparingly.
I think she was good for what she had to do. I enjoyed her a lot when she was on screen. I just wish
she was in it more because she's such a good actress.
Sure.
I think I would have I don't know.
But even that, and getting back to the Jedi, I don't know. I saw someone post, I think it was Frank posted Delco's Prodigal Son in our group chat. Like, it was like comic book something posted. It was like an opinion. It was like, this show makes the Jedi unredeemable. Bitch, they have always been. They were ready. They were ready to take over the government after they kill Palpatine. By the way, he was a bad guy, sure, but like they are this terrible bureaucracy of assholes who steal children. Like,
it's funny. I like them when they're at their worst in the Clone Wars, when they're totally not off the reservation of what their like MO is.
Well, and it feels like they just, and that's the idea of even the prequels. They become complacent.
It's because
they're not even teaching people to fight like Sith, or because the idea that they would never even run into them again because they have been wiped out. I don't know, like, and then they start talking about like this person was killed by like a lightsaber, like what the fuck, like that stuff's kind of interesting to me because they're so unused to that. But again, an incredibly clunkily laid out story to me.
I think the Clone Wars does it well with the Jedi because I don't think they're not focusing on like you agreeing or disagreeing with what the Jedi are doing. They are just doing it. You know, it doesn't, the show.
No, this is definitely, I agree with you. This is definitely more focused on like the Jedi as an organization.
Right. But it seems like with like newer Star Wars media, it seems like they want the audience to care about where the Jedi is, or like that's really like a part of the story or a narrative beat. It's like, hey, like look at what the Jedi are doing. Red flag, you know? Like they're really like it's a thing. But in the Clone Wars it's not. But it's still there.
Well, again, the Clone Wars is more of the background, whereas like I think this more specifically, it is about the Jedi and what they do and how they operate, and even the way the whole situation unfolds with Osha. Like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Saul is seeing this like weird coven of witches.
So they're Night Sisters?
Yeah, they say they're Night. The guy says they're Night Sisters. They're just a different sect.
Doesn't Carrie-Anne Moss's character go like, are they Night Sisters? Like, do we know that for sure?
Well,
like,
I think the idea
seems like
is
they
like
are, but like we
they're
can't
not.
be.
I guess like they are witches in the same vein as Night Sisters at the very least.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know if I would call them Night Sisters. You know,
semantics. I think at that point, but
it seems like the fact that they were questioning it themselves like kind of makes me say that. But
sure. And again, I don't remember Carrie-Anne Moss like necessarily repeating back.
Yeah,
but
no, she was just like
or something. Of
are
the
they
sort.
Night Sisters?
Right.
Yeah. Like they were like that's what they seem like. Yeah, and then being like sort of engaged in like the ritual, and then like, dude, the Wookiee character fucking fucking up Torben, by the
cool.
way, plays Tommen in Game of Thrones. Yeah, like,
dude, his lightsaber spin mount was really good.
Yeah, like seeing like the physicality of a Wookiee against a human was really cool, and how he fucked him up. And I like how like that team just got like destroyed,
like it
and
broke
then
them almost.
right,
Yeah.
and then you kind of see like their downfall like in the beginning of the show. Again, we're like they're taking an approach. I'm like, we're going to tell the narrative in a not linear way. I'm curious what it would look like if you did tell the narrative in a linear way.
Maybe you would enjoy it more.
Yeah, maybe.
I think so. Again, I keep repeating myself at this point, but there are elements of this show that I think work extremely well, and I think are very interesting ideas. They're just not placed out well, and I do think that makes it not a great show. And I guess getting back to your idea of like, should you watch it or should you not? I don't know, man. At this point, it really does depend on, I guess, what you're looking for. I think there's some really cool lightsaber stuff in this. I think there's some so-so acting. I think there's some interesting story choices. But overall, I don't know. It's just more, I guess, I'm down to the point of because I didn't watch this week to week. The conversation I was seeing online.
I watched it within, I would say, a week and a half.
Yeah. The conversation online was like they were taking a sword to King Leonidas or something. And I don't know if that's, maybe altered my vision on this, but it just was not nearly to that, like, degree for me. And I don't think, like, the woke message, which, by the way, I despise that word at this point because it's, I think, a bit meaningless.
It's lost. Yeah, it's lost meaning. Yeah. What does it even mean?
What is it? Like, I'm so, like if a show has a bunch of diverse characters but isn't harping on certain themes, is that woke? Like, I don't know. There's a whole thing behind that. I just don't think that messaging is as like slap in your face as even The Boys gets to, when we'll get to that sometimes. But I don't know. It just felt like they gave a show to a creator and they absolutely allowed that creator to make what they wanted, for better or for worse. So
yeah. So this was, besides Andor season 2, that's the only thing coming up in turn. Well, and Skeleton Crew. If you're an audio listener, I just rolled my eyes really hard. I feel like we're finally at the end of like that first sort of
wave of what was
batch
announced.
of ideas for these Star Wars shows,
and we haven't gotten much in the way of announcements yet. As far as next up, give me more movies, Gooch. You know what?
Shows.
I think this actually.
I think it's very clear that like Star Wars shows don't work as shows. There are good moments and good episodes within this stuff, but I feel like overall we're not talking about how good Star Wars shows are in live action.
I think it's been a very mixed bag.
How mixed bag and negative they are, and how Book of Boba Fett was trash. But there are some cool moments in the Book of Boba Fett, like we talked about. Right. And like, I
would say the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian are top tier for me. Andor is fantastic. Like, some of the best Star Wars ever, in my humble opinion. I think it's very hit or miss, and I think they just need, the right people behind these. And when you have an organization as large as Disney, you're going to have different people coming in that might not hit the same way. And honestly, every Star Wars show isn't for everyone, too. I don't know, like, if I should, maybe this one is probably more aimed for everyone. And, if you don't like it, more power to you. And I think that's very fair. And I think there are very real and reasonable critiques to be had here. But I'm with you, Gooch. It's been such a scattershot. The way we go from Andor to something like Book of Boba Fett, like, I don't think this is even close to as bad as Book of Boba Fett for me. But, like, it's just a wildly mixed bag, and I wish I could have some consistency. And I do think you start getting into some gray area of, pardon my pun, I should say, when you start to make Star Wars gray. Because guess what? Star Wars wasn't made to be gray. It was made that there was a dark side and a light side. And when you start, exploring the gray area of it, you're going to have to make some choices that either people aren't going to like or they are going to like. And I think that's just going to be part of it here, especially when you have something as large as the Star Wars property and that makes as much money as it does.
Speaking of gray, you mentioned something about Ahsoka at the start.
You can definitely tell that this was inspired by Ahsoka's story, like how Osha is part of the Jedi and leaves because she, feels not exactly the same, but she's a Jedi that maybe not in the same way as Ahsoka. Ahsoka left on her own fruition, whatever that word is. Volition, thank you. And made that choice on her own and kind of saw the Jedi as like, I don't want to be as part of this. Osha seemed to have been kind of pushed out and didn't feel like she was worthy of being a Jedi, almost in a way. But then she found out that it was actually all these feelings and things that she was bearing was because of the Jedi and because of Saul. And she kind of does make that choice to no, the Jedi suck. I'm actually gonna. I still can't believe she killed Saul. I actually really can't believe they went through with that. But yeah, I don't know, man. Again, some great ideas lost in the thick of it. I don't think it's this train wreck that I've seen online, but hey, more power to you if you think that way, genuinely. Anything else for you, Gooch?
I think that's it, man. I think we said our piece.
I think so too. I do. Well, thank you all so much for watching with us live on twitch.tv/Delco Nerd Network. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Just search Delco Nerd Network on your service of choice. We got a Facebook page, a Discord channel on all the social medias as well, at Delco Nerds on everything with an @ sign. You can find all this information at our website, delconerdnetwork.com. You can even email us your comments, questions, or concerns to delconerds@gmail.com. We would be happy to respond to you. But for Gooch, I've been Trio. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay nerdy, and we will see you next time.